Hello everyone and good afternoon to the IOER Forum series, which deals with the future of sustainability, reinventing sustainability. That's the modest title that we chose for the series, and we're discussing it indeed with a serious intention, which is to rethink the way how sustainability is conceived of, framed, and most of all also used in a variety of contexts where we, of course, focus on policy and science as the most important ones. Just briefly looking back on what we have had as contributions and what we've discussed so far around this. Obviously, I guess we're all aware of sustainability being, in a way, the core paradigm that is guiding responses to global challenges today. But also being aware that it's a concept that since its emergence on the political stage has always been subject to fundamental criticisms in multiple regards. And some of those we have, of course, already come across in our discussions, but as I mentioned before, we are mostly interested in looking forward. So thinking about what does this actually mean for referring to sustainability in the future. So in our previous debates, we've had contributions by Konrad Ott, for instance, from a philosophical, ethical perspective, where he was talking about differences between strong and weak sustainability, of course, and necessities to strengthen the notion of strong sustainability, especially in ethical terms, for instance, regarding animal ethics, but also in terms of the principles that might guide operation in terms of law and regulation, and focusing on regaining, on revitalizing nature in particular. We have had Ivan González Márquez talking about the dark side of sustainability, so he was very much focusing on criticisms, that concept being hegemonial, imperialist in a way, and was asking for a decolonialization of the term and epistemological pluralism. We then had Louis Coetzee discussing it, especially from a legal perspective, and suggesting to turn towards alternative forms of being and seeing the world, suggesting in particular the approach of Ubuntu, largely or widely spread in African countries, for reconceiving of our institutions and also our laws and regulations. We then had also Felix Eckhardt with very concrete suggestions about how this might be done in terms of conceiving of juridical norms and juridical instruments that might be suitable for acting in a direction understood as sustainability without actually needing to refer to this term, especially by using freedom as a core concept, as he has already done successfully in some trials. And last but not least, Anna Henkel talking about a concept of dilemmata of sustainability, essentially suggesting to think of a kind of a reflexive framework within which, in very concrete contexts, sustainability can be explored and investigated, especially with a view to the diverse conflicts that it implies in terms of goals, in terms of interests, in terms of timeframes, responsibilities, etc., and thereby also being able to address epistemological pluralism and different forms of knowledge. Yeah, so these were some of the aspects that have played a role in the past so far, and today we are very happy to have Andra-Ioana here. She is a professor at the University of Kassel, Institute of Philosophy, where she is leading the field of expertise, cultures of sustainability. And she's also one of the 4 co-directors of the Kassel Institute for Sustainability. She has been a fellow at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam in 2022, and her research interests may be outlined as referring to social ecological systems and place-based transdisciplinary co-creation, particularly in there, the role of core human values in inner worlds, and overall theory and practice of transformative sustainability science. So I suppose that with that, we will certainly turn also towards the particular role of science in referring to the future of sustainability. And I would like to pass the word to Andra-Ioana, and we look very much forward to your contribution.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the invitation, and I hope you can hear me well. Thank you for the kind introduction, and I'm happy to share my thoughts on transformative sustainability science as a lever for sustainability transformations, and in this context to reflect together on the potential role of values as leverage points. Yeah, I'm a sustainability scientist with a background in place-based transdisciplinary research, affiliated with the Kassel Institute, and I'm currently leading since February this year the project Lever with the long title, Our Sustainable Future, the Values That Drive It and How to Get There. I will now quickly try to share my slides. Hoping that it works. I will focus in my presentation on four main aspects: transformative sustainability research, what it is, overlooked dimensions of sustainability transformations, values in transformative sustainability research, and I will propose a new vocabulary for thinking about values in sustainability transformations. There is an agreement that dominant research modes are not enough to respond to the current sustainability crisis, and that sustainability transformations need to be reflected at the level of science itself. But which are the theory and practice of how to conduct research that purposefully supports sustainability transformations? How can science become this critical lever in achieving the SDGs and beyond? Can sustainability science move from calling for change to enabling transformative change? In order to answer this question, I go back to the emergence of sustainability science in the late 80s, early 90s. Since its beginning, sustainability science was supposed to be different. In what ways is it supposed to be different? It arguably pushes the boundaries of scientific comfort, of scientific investigation beyond the usual comfort zones, because in addition to weaving physical, social, moral, and ethical complexity, in addition to encompassing multiple scales, dynamics, and actors, it also weaves different styles of knowledge production. We can refer to these styles of knowledge production as a dominant and a more transformative one. These are in no particular order some useful but sometimes neglected distinctions between mainstream sustainability research and this rather transformative side of sustainability science. For example, there is often the assumption of a unidirectional flow of information from science to society versus a dynamic science-society relationship. The next three distinctions between a descriptive analytical, an action-oriented, problem-oriented, a solution orientation, knowledge about a system, and knowledge about how to reach a desirable state of a system, they basically all in a synthesis are saying that knowing the cause of a problem, while often helpful, it does not directly immediately translate into knowing how to intervene to solve that problem. Moreover, mainstream sustainability research is to some extent more used to considering causal relationships and logic than to considering teleological processes and normative goals. Another example, social science experiments are established methods in social sciences, while currently sustainability science is developing its own type of experimentation within real-world labs, which have their own epistemological requirements. Dominant research works by producing knowledge in order to inform policy interventions, whereas transformative research seeks to couple the process of knowledge production with co-producing change through so-called research interventions, which I will elaborate on in my presentation. So one of the main reasons why sustainability science is different is that it has these two streams or branches. The more descriptive analytical stream on the right-hand side, where the creation of knowledge dominates, and the transformative stream in the middle, which seeks to transform through the knowledge process itself. There have been many authors who noted this distinction through time, giving different names to the two streams. For example, the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies, the ISS, currently RIFS, distinguishes between transformation research, research about or on transformation, and transformative research, doing research differently in a transformative manner. One of the most useful conceptualizations in terms of how and for which purpose knowledge is produced is the distinction between a mode 1 and a mode 2 science. Epistemologically, transformative sustainability research can be considered as grounded in this mode 2 science. And in this figure, I'm trying to elaborate on what I would say there is a continuum between mode 2 and mode 1 and mode 2 knowledge production. For orientation, we can consider the first column, the left-hand side column, as dominant research, in the middle, transdisciplinary research, and right-hand transformative research. We move from knowledge extraction to knowledge co-production with a heterogeneity of academic and non-academic relevant actors, and towards sustainability science experimentation, where co-created interventions are also used to produce evidence. Adopting a transformative way with regard to research participants may mean moving from considering them as design recipients to them being integrated as design participants and furthermore considered agents of change. With regard to how research works with values, we move from the elicitation of values to their explicit inclusion in the research process, and furthermore to unleashing values, or how about co-creating values. Working with how research works with knowledge, maybe it means moving from this descriptive analytical knowledge, so from explaining, to actionable knowledge, and then to embedding knowledge co-creation in processes of societal change. Another example with regard to disciplines, it can mean moving from multidisciplinarity to transdisciplinarity, and now in comparison to 2022, I'm tempted to say undisciplinarity. With regard to the relationship between knowledge and values, it can potentially mean moving from considering values as knowledge as linked, but also separate, to considering them as connected and intertwined. And with regard to the relationship between knowledge and action, moving from the assumption that knowledge follows automatically from action to linking knowledge and action purposefully, and then even considering that knowledge is action because the processes of producing knowledge and action are so intertwined and coupled. While building on the distinction between mode 1 and mode 2 science and between the transformative and the descriptive stream, we use these two axes to try and situate transformative sustainability research. Problem-oriented versus solution-oriented, and research operating from science to society versus research operating in a dialogical science-society relationship. In order to further delineate transformative sustainability research, I rely on one of the most commonly used heuristics in sustainability science, the 3 forms of knowledge, which, according to sustainability science, are needed to guide sustainability transformations. In green, system knowledge, an understanding of a system's current dynamics, function, components. Orange, target knowledge, an understanding of a system's desirable future vision, and transformation knowledge, an understanding of the pathways and intervention strategies needed to reach that desirable vision in the target knowledge. So to demarcate transformative research, we located at the intersection of solution-oriented research and the reflexive dialogical science-society relationship, while also recognizing that there are other forms of socially engaged research that seek to link knowledge and action that can also be located in a similar area, with transformative sustainability research intending to be somewhere near the top right corner. So what does transformative sustainability research mean? It means the reflexive collaborative production of transformation knowledge, processes, pathways, levers, and leverage points, organized as an intervention that facilitates intentional change towards a desirable future in a contextually defined system. It aims to co-produce, test, and implement transformation knowledge. It means the normative responsibility of academia to inform and accompany transformations, supporting just and fair futures for people and nature. Transformative research is defined as the ensemble of methods and concepts enabling academics to take an active role in processes of societal change by developing knowledge about options, solutions, and pathways, and by participating in their implementation. These two definitions share similar elements, reference to two of the three forms of knowledge, target knowledge in desirable future, just and fair futures, a reference to transformation knowledge, processes, pathways, levers, leverage points, processes of societal change, options, solutions, and pathways. They also share reference to the interventional and normative nature of transformative research. Reflexive, normative, intervention, intentional change, implementation, active role. We propose 6 recurring characteristics, from which I will talk about only 3. 6 recurring characteristics of transformative research, starting with the interventional nature. At the heart of transformative research, there is the desire to go beyond observing and analyzing current states of the world to enacting change towards desirable states of the world. In comparison with transdisciplinary sustainability research, the knowledge co-production process in itself is the main intervention. In addition to expected that the co-produced knowledge will generate societal and scientific impact by feeding other external governance or, for example, technological interventions. Systems thinking literacy, another characteristic, is a holistic cognitive framework that shifts the focus of analysis from elements to interrelationships and trains the ability to identify and deal with uncertainty. Alongside this theoretical literacy, sustainability problems and solution options are context-dependent, situating the practice of transformative research in real-life circumstances, which demand attention to bounded political, institutional, socioeconomic, and ecological contexts. So this is to say that there is this permanent alternation between zooming in on the small scale and zooming out, facilitated by systems thinking. Transformative research has at its core the normative dimension of orienting societal development toward human values such as empathy. Reflexivity is a way to bring transparency and light to this normative mission. Reflexivity expands and challenges the conventional role of researchers to interrogate the assumptions they bring to the research inquiry. It is essential that transformative researchers become more reflexive about their non-epistemic values underpinning methodological choices. Allocating resources, time, space for critical self and group reflection in inter and transdisciplinary contexts could support the development of reflexivity as a common practice. Conducting research in a transformative way illuminates 3 prominent tensions in both theory and practice: process orientation versus outcome orientation, accountability towards society and accountability towards science and the scientific method, methodologies rooted in scientific traditions based on a Cartesian specialization of knowledge, and post-normal methodologies characterized by contested facts, urgent decisions, high stakes. The first tension arises due to the process-oriented strategy primarily aiming at co-modeling and inciting societal change, with the academic output being treated as secondary. In contrast, the output-oriented strategy primarily aims at, for example, publishable results, with societal change as a side effect. Although the two orientations can be complementary, researchers may encounter the paradoxical situation where process orientation hinders academic outputs because of administrative or bureaucratic constraints, while output orientation drives low-quality engagement. Transformative researchers are, in a way, torn between needing to prove adequate contributions to science according to the expectation of their academic environments, and wanting to engage in processes of co-creating change. For the second tension, the new roles proposed for sustainability and especially for transformative researchers, ultimately based on a normative orientation of their work and on an arguably potentially diminishing of the empirical part in the research, exemplify the second tension, the double accountability. It leads transformative researchers to a paradoxical situation where their engagement in brokering social processes reduces the role of empirical methods in the scientific practice and increases the importance of other competencies and skills, such as, for example, process facilitation. Yet their focus on accountability towards science may risk producing less relevant, less socially relevant knowledge. And in the third tension, researchers grapple with aligning the implementation of transformative research designs with the existing institutionalized science and its proven reliability, sometimes at the expense of purposeful intervention. At the same time, attempts to stay within the validated institutionalized science can sometimes prove unreliable and inappropriate to tackle sustainability problems and to meet the expectations of solving them, which society seems to put forward as an aim for the institution of science. As transformative research seeks to transform knowledge systems, it may not be rewarded by an academic and funding system designed around the knowledge systems that it actually seeks to transform. Coming to this figure, it is important for two reasons. First, it shows one of the established frameworks for carrying out, for implementing transformative research, which relies on the three forms of knowledge and has three main stages of system analysis, visioning desirable futures, and designing intervention strategies. Second, this figure highlights some overlooked dimensions of sustainability transformation research. Most of the studies to date have focused on past, present, and future analytical descriptions of social ecological systems of interest, rather than on desirable futures, visions, and transformation pathways. So comparatively, transformation knowledge has received considerably less attention, leading to persistent methods and approach gaps. Although this particular paper draws on a specific thematic field, that of coastal research, the trend is similar across thematic fields. Also, it is important to note that scenarios are considered as part of system knowledge and not of target knowledge. And when anticipation research takes place, it rather focuses on those plausible futures rather than the desirable ones. Similarly, another blind spot in sustainability transformation research are the inner dimensions of sustainability. While acknowledging the importance of work that has been done in the exterior quadrants, in the external world, on technology, isolated systems like energy system, food system, human behavior, on wider socioeconomic structures, the sustainability polycrisis is a reflection of inner worlds and of their internal crises, rooted in the human disconnect from self and others, encompassing here future generations and the more than human. Sustainability science, therefore, needs to integrate or focus on inner dimensions of sustainability at both individual and collective level. This may include values, mindsets, consciousness, worldviews. So why are these inner worlds so important? Why do they matter? To answer this question, two theoretical models are useful: the three spheres of transformation and the leverage points metaphor, and you may have seen this figure many times already. The inner dimensions of sustainability are sometimes conceptualized as the personal sphere of transformation, one of the three spheres of transformation coined by Karen O'Brien, alongside the political and the practical spheres, whereby subjective values and paradigms influence how people conceive of systems and influence people's behavior and practices. The three spheres correspond quite well with the 12 leverage points for systems change identified by Donella Meadows. Respectively, they correspond to the 4 types of leverage points identified by Absen et al. In 2017, which have been both considered useful frameworks for conceptualizing transformation. The personal sphere, which at a collective level could be called the cultural sphere, aligns with places of intervention or leverage points with increased effectiveness and stability, where intervention can lead to fundamental change in the system as a whole, as opposed to incremental changes. For various reasons, partly linked to their intangibility, some of the most transformative dimensions of systems have received less attention. Falling into the realm of the personal sphere, values are considered deep leverage points. In the second part of my presentation, I will therefore mainly focus on values, almost considering them as a proxy for inner worlds and inner dimensions of sustainability. Values are a generous topic because there are many established bodies of work coming from the more traditional disciplines, such as behavioral sciences, economics, environmental psychology, sociology, which look at values from their own disciplinary perspective and often from a mode 1 science standpoint. This figure does not do justice to all the work existing on values. It tries to broadly illustrate one of the mainstream pathways of considering values. Under mode 1, the production of knowledge is regarded as largely value-free. Values are external to the inquirer. In the red box, starting from the assumption that society has in its organization effective formal institutions and a strong governance, action follows from knowledge, and produced knowledge informs policy measures, technical and behavioral interventions, yellow box, which produce results that can be measured, monitored, evaluated, and sometimes monetized in order to reach visions of sustainable futures in the dark green box. However, in the following, I am asking and I'm interested in how are values treated not by traditional disciplines, but how does sustainability science look at values? In 2019, we looked broadly into the sustainability science literature and found out there are main 4 ways of looking at values. Reflecting or surfacing implicit values, how values inform scientific understandings of the world. Negotiating values, whose values count in assessing states of the world. Eliciting values, how to elicit values ascribed to different states of the world. And transforming through values, using values as leverage points for changing states of the world. And how do values map onto the main heuristic of sustainability science based on the 3 forms of knowledge? Under system knowledge, we have a fair understanding that values are part of causal chains of cognitive elements. They explain, they can be predictors of human behavior. Under target knowledge, we find studies where certain values are underpinning just desirable and sustainable futures. They are almost an end goal in itself. And under transformation knowledge, there is especially conceptual work around values as leverage points. Here we have less transformation knowledge about how to reach a just and sustainable future, and less about how to capitalize on values as a moral resource. We know little about how to work with values as leverage points, and actually the paper I put here is almost like an exception. So zooming to values as target knowledge. Following the approval of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, the IBES Values Assessment in July 22, the term sustainability-aligned values was coined for those desirable values, such as care for nature, solidarity among humans, that are found to be associated with future scenarios linked to the achievement of the SDGs, and that characterize desirable human-human and human-nature relationships. For example, this is a shared vision of a desirable future for the landscapes in southern Pennsylvania. And to some extent, it is easy when looking at this visual to see which values are represented or reflected by the vision. For example, we can see diversity, respect for the natural environment, respect for the cultural heritage, environmental stewardship. Still under values as target knowledge, thinking about values as telos speaks about setting a goal, setting an intent, committing to a purpose, making an intentional choice. The inner development goals, which I do not show on this slide, could fit here as potential examples. To illustrate, in a way, values as telos, I chose the below quote, where I replaced going to the moon with tackling the sustainability crisis. It reads like this. We choose to tackle the polycrisis in the Anthropocene. We choose to go towards a just and sustainable future in this decade and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others too. Now, zooming into values as leverage points. One of the most developed theories around values as leverage points was proposed again by the IBES in 2019 in the Global Assessment. It outlines 8 leverage points, among which unleash values and action, and 5 levers in the form of multi-actor governance interventions that could enable transformative change. Here, values are considered as both underlying the root causes, i.e. the indirect drivers of biodiversity loss, so system knowledge, but also as a leverage point that can be actioned through multi-actor interventions. This figure also marks a transition in vocabulary from considering leverage points as nouns, places or system properties, to actions such as unleash values and action, embrace diversity, reduce consumption, reduce inequalities. And this is more recent IPES work that keeps expanding this vocabulary for engaging with values for sustainability transformation. This is taken from the summary for policymakers of the values assessment, which concludes that transformative change is more likely to be catalyzed through a combination of values and valuation-based leverage points. To note here that values, again, are value-based leverage points are actions. Deep leverage points include both the mobilization of sustainability-aligned values, such as caring for nature, and the shifting of societal goals and norms, such as shifting the notion of a good quality of life. What do we mean by human well-being? These words, to mobilize and to shift, are frequently used in last years when discussing values and sustainability transformation. So what about mobilizing values? Chapter 5 of the IPES values assessment recognized, based on literature analysis, that mobilizing values for sustainability contains 2 distinct and related modes, shifting and enabling. This seems contradictory in the sense that the mode of enabling implies that the right values are already there, albeit latent, and just need to be included more prominently in societal decision-making. However, what was not made explicit in the analyzed literature was that shifting mode typically refers to moving away from values linked to unsustainability, and the enabling mode targets sustainability-aligned values. In a follow-up paper building on the main distinction between enabling and shifting, we distinguish 2 further modes of mobilizing values, including as a subcategory of enabling values that specifically addresses the marginalization of some people's values through domination by others and the need to have those values represented, and the modality of reflecting as actions towards individual and community consciousness. This is yet another short example of this more action-oriented transformative sustainability research perspective on values. There may be interventions that diversify and align values, interventions that nurture values, interventions that temper values. Along these pathways which are trying to link the present to just and sustainable futures. Future empirical research may need to uncover the tools, practices, and methods for intervening at values level and construct the evidence base for values as leverage points. For example, these papers are getting closer to outlining how value-based interventions may look like. For example, in positive psychology, the notion of value activation means the intentional processes which enable individuals to demonstrate behavior that is consistent with their self-related attitudes, traits, or norms. Character strengths and virtues are self-identified with the help of a given intervention. Through self-reporting and third-party reflection, individuals can become aware of their values and thereafter to choose to align their behavior. including human nature preferences with those values. Another example, that of a value-based urban living laboratory. Living labs are usually focused on specific innovations like transport, energy systems, tourism, or education. Instead, our Cluj lab focuses on well-being. So again, the question of what do we mean by human well-being, and seeks to activate values of care and trust to replace the imperative of efficiency in guiding urban transitions. In summary, how might a mode to science pathway for engaging with values look like? It recognizes individuals as agency holders, starting with the red box. It departs from a different assumption about the role of science in society. Values-based interventions encompass a variety of possibilities, from reflecting, surfacing, enabling, to activating, unleashing, and potentially other terms from this new vocabulary around values as leverage points. The visions of sustainable futures are co-created, and the values underpinning these visions are made transparent or deliberated. And there's an implicit inclusion of non-epistemic values in the whole research process. To conclude, this new vocabulary, which I tried to exemplify in the past slides, is an alternative to the dominant treatment of values as part of an underlying explanation or causality. It emphasizes the complementary perspective of values as a purpose, something that can be consciously engaged with, mobilized, activated, and leveraged for the sake of sustainability. And it allows to place values at the epicenter of an intervention, weaving both knowing and willing. So coming back to my initial question, can sustainability science move from calling for change to enabling transformative change? To answer it, I emphasized 3 directions. Values are a moral resource to be capitalized upon. In order to capitalize on the transformative potential of values, we need to engage with values in a transformative way, means coupling knowledge to action. Engaging with values in a transformative way demands rethinking the relationship between science and society and cultivating these pluralistic science-society dialogues. And I suggest that these 3 elements may help push the boundaries of science from calling for change to enabling transformative change. Thank you.
Thank you, Andra, for your very nice input. And I am sure that there are comments and questions from our participants.